stay where you are for a second, because I want to talk to you about one other topic. But first, John's going to tell us about it.
Well, you see, the Chancellor may have been squeezing every possible penny out of public spending, but for one group of bankers, the pounds were looking after themselves yesterday. Barclays has been accused of burying bad news on budget day as 9 top bankers were handed the best part of £40 million. The highest beneficiary by far was the racehorse-owning investment banking chief, Rich Ricci. No, I'm not joking. He landed an £18 million windfall. Mr. Ricci was a trusted ally of the disgraced former Barclays boss, Bob Diamond, but he's managed to keep his job despite being in joint control of the investment bank when it was fined £290 million for rigging LIBOR interest rates last summer. Seen here with champagne fever, Mr. Ricci also owns the provocatively named Fat Cat in the Hat, and both ran in last week's Cheltenham Festival. All this after Barclays chief executive Anthony Jenkins told me last month that the bank had turned over a new leaf.
We have learned the lessons of the past at Barclays. We have, in my view, been too aggressive, been too short-term focused and too self-serving. What is really important now is to fix the problems, as we will do, and build a better Barclays going forward.
Well, with all that in mind, I tried to call the great Mr. Ricci earlier to ask whether he plans to return any of the obscene amount of money he's just been landed. Hi, is Rich Ricci there by any chance? John Snow. His secretary said he would call me back. I'm sure it won't surprise you. He never did.
Thanks, John. Well, Brooks Newmark, these are the sorts of people that George Osborne has been batting for in Europe, is it, to protect their bonuses?
I don't think so. It's a rather cynical approach. I think that Barclays has management, it has shareholders, and it makes profits. It's not up for the government to start legislating who gets a lot of money. Yes, it's a lot of money. I suspect it's not in cash, it's in shares, and there'll be clawbacks if he doesn't continue to make money. If he does make money, by the way, he will end up paying almost half of that back to the Exchequer in tax.
John Mann, I mean, what would you do about somebody like this? Would you limit the amount Barclays can pay him, or what?
Yes, a bonus cap, as proposed by everyone else in Europe, would be a good thing in this country, but you know, it's an insult. It's an insult when everyone else is suffering. That, you know, this was criminal fraud with LIBOR. Not a single Barclays person, I think, has yet gone to prison. There's been no accountability at the top for their mismanagement. And what they do is pay themselves these huge amounts. It is quite extraordinary. It says something about the morality that we now have. That, you know, that there aren't demonstrations in every street in the country.
Okay,
it's quite unacceptable.
I should just point out that there's obviously no evidence of any criminal allegation against Mr. Ricci with regard to the LIBOR scandal. But Brooks Newmark, I mean, can you answer John Mann's substantive point about the morality of this kind of remuneration?
What's the morality of paying a footballer huge amounts of money or an actor huge amounts of money? You know, unless John is going to say that Mr. Ricci is complicit in the LIBOR fraud, you know, it's up to shareholders and managers to decide how much he makes. If he makes he makes a huge amount of money, it is nothing to do with the government. If he makes a huge amount of money for Barclays and shareholders, it is not up to government to cap what anybody gets paid.
John Mann, briefly.
Barclays were complicit in the LIBOR fraud, and it was a fraud. But, you know, footballers and actors haven't brought this country to its knees. Bankers have, through their greed and excesses, and they're continuing.
Yes, but not all bankers have.
Been learned.
You can't tar a whole industry with tens of thousands of people in it by the poor behaviour of a few people.
All right.
LIBOR fraud, terrible.
It is terrible, I agree with you, but you can't accuse Mr. Ricci of that unless you're saying that live on TV.
John Mann, I don't think anyone's accusing Mr. Ricci of anything criminal directly.
No, Barclays Bank.
Make that clear. But
Let's
John
be
Mann,
clear, Barclays Bank.
Thank you very much indeed.